Marcus learned very early that silence could be louder than words. It was something you felt before you understood it. The way a room could change when you spoke. The way eyes lingered a second longer on your skin. The way disbelief settled in before you even finished your sentence. At 10 years old, Marcus Johnson already knew what it felt like not to be believed. His school sat at the edge of a quiet suburban town, the kind of place where lawns were trimmed every Saturday and flags waved politely in the breeze. It was a good school, people said, safe, respectable. But good schools could still carry old ideas. Marcus sat in the third row by the window, where sunlight fell across his desk every morning. He liked that seat. It helped him think. Helped him imagine places beyond the classroom walls. On this particular morning, the lesson was simple. Career Day, the teacher announced, writing the words across the whiteboard. Today we're going to talk about what our parents do for a living. The class buzzed with excitement. My mom's a nurse. My dad owns a car dealership. My parents run a restaurant. Hands shot up eagerly. Marcus stayed quiet. Not because he didn't know what his father did, but because he knew what usually happened when he said it. The teacher, Mrs. Aldridge, scanned the room and smiled. Marcus, she said, her voice polite but firm. Why don't you share? Every head turned. Marcus swallowed. My dad is in the army, he began. That part was easy. Mrs. Aldridge nodded. That's wonderful. And what does he do in the army? Marcus hesitated just for a second, long enough for doubt to creep in. He's a general, Marcus said. A 4-star general. The room reacted instantly. A sharp laugh. A scoff. A whisper that wasn't as quiet as it should have been. Mrs. Aldridge's smile froze. She tilted her head slightly, studying Marcus the way adults do when they think a child is exaggerating. A general? She repeated. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. She raised a hand. Marcus, she said gently. There's no need to make things up. The words hit him like cold water. I'm not making it up, he replied, his voice softer now. That's really his job. A boy in the back muttered, Yeah, right. Mrs. Aldridge sighed, not angrily, but disappointedly. That kind of sigh hurt more. We talked about honesty in this classroom, she said. It's okay to be proud of your parents without exaggerating. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. My dad doesn't exaggerate, he said quietly. He just doesn't talk about it. Mrs. Aldridge's expression hardened just enough. Marcus, she said, lowering her voice, according to your school records, your father works in logistics. That usually means warehouse or transportation work. The class watched closely now. There's nothing wrong with that, she continued. But pretending your father is something he's not isn't appropriate. Pretending. Marcus's chest tightened. He wasn't pretending. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Because to them, a black boy from his neighborhood didn't fit the picture of a general's son. He looked down at his desk. The lesson moved on, but something had shifted. At recess, the questions came. So when's your dad gonna fly in on a helicopter? Does he have a tank? Why do you live where you live then? Marcus didn't answer. He had learned that explaining yourself to people, who had already decided never worked. That afternoon, he walked home slowly, backpack heavy against his shoulders. When he opened the front door, the house was quiet. His mother's shoes were by the door. His father's were not. That meant he was gone again. Marcus dropped his bag and sat on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. He thought about the way Mrs. Aldridge looked at him. Not angry, not cruel, just sure he was lying. That night, when his father finally came home, it was late. Marcus pretended to be asleep as the door creaked open. He heard the familiar sounds, keys on the counter, a quiet sigh, footsteps moving carefully through the house. His father stood in the doorway of Marcus's room longer than usual. Marcus felt the weight of his presence even with his eyes closed. A hand rested gently on his shoulder. Sleep well, champ, his father whispered. Marcus didn't move, but something inside him hardened. The next day at school, whispers followed him again. Liar. Why'd you make that up? You really thought we'd believe you? And then, just before lunch, the principal's voice came over the intercom. Attention students and staff. Tomorrow we will be holding a special assembly. A distinguished guest from the United States Army will be visiting our school. The classroom stirred. Mrs. Aldridge smiled proudly. Marcus stared straight ahead. He had no idea that the silence around him was about to break, louder than anything he had ever heard. Marcus's house always felt quieter when his father was away. Not empty, just quiet in a way that made every sound louder than it should have been. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock above the stove, the distant bark of a dog somewhere down the street. That evening, Marcus sat at the kitchen table doing homework while his mother moved slowly between the sink and the counter. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that settles into your shoulders and stays. How was school? She asked without turning around. Marcus hesitated. It was fine, he said. She paused, then continued washing a plate. Mothers always knew when fine wasn't fine. But some days they chose not to push, especially when pushing meant opening a door neither of them had the strength to walk through. Marcus stared at the words on his worksheet, but they blurred together. His mind kept replaying the moment in class, the way Mrs. Aldridge's eyes narrowed, the way her voice softened as if talking to someone who needed correction, not belief. He finally spoke. They said I was lying, he said quietly. His mother turned around. Who? She asked. The kids and the teacher. She set the plate down carefully. About what? Marcus swallowed. About Dad. The room seemed to hold its breath. She walked over and sat across from him, folding her hands together. What did you say about your father? She asked gently. Marcus met her eyes. I told them the truth. She nodded slowly. And they didn't believe you. No, Marcus said. They said a black kid like me wouldn't have a dad who's a general. The words came out flat, like he'd practiced saying them in his head. His mother closed her eyes for a moment. That night, when Marcus went to bed, he listened to the quiet again. He wondered where his father was, what city, what building, what conversation he was in right now. He wondered if his father ever felt small the way he did that day. When his father came home 2 nights later, it was just before midnight. Marcus heard the familiar sounds and sat up in bed. Dad? He called softly. The door opened, and his father stepped in, still in plain clothes. No uniform. Never a uniform. Hey, champ, his father said. You should be asleep. Marcus nodded but didn't lie back down. His father sat on the edge of the bed. You okay? He asked. Marcus hesitated, then nodded again. But this time his father didn't accept it. You want to talk? He asked. Marcus looked at him. Why don't you tell people what you do? Marcus asked. His father went still. Why would you want me to? He asked. Because they think I'm lying, Marcus said. They think I make things up because I'm black. His father exhaled slowly. People make assumptions, he said. That's on them. Not you. But it feels like it's on me, Marcus replied. I'm the one they laugh at. His father placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Listen to me, he said. Your job is not to convince people who've already decided who you are. Marcus didn't answer. Some truths, his father continued, are heavy, and some people don't know how to carry them. But I can, Marcus said. His father smiled, proud but sad too. I know you can, he said. That's why this is hard. At school the next day, the whispers hadn't stopped. They had changed. Now they weren't curious, and they were confident. Guess the general didn't show up. Yet. Maybe he's imaginary. My mom says generals don't live in apartments. Mrs. Aldridge never said anything else about it. But that somehow felt worse. The silence was confirmation in the eyes of the class. During reading time, Marcus noticed how often she watched him. Not unkindly, just cautiously, as if waiting for another lie. At lunch, Marcus sat alone. That's when a girl named Emily sat down across from him. I think you were telling the truth, she said. Marcus looked up, surprised. Why? He asked. She shrugged. My uncle's in the army. He says the real important ones don't talk about it much. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Thanks, he said. That afternoon, the principal walked into the classroom. Mrs. Aldridge straightened immediately. Good afternoon, the principal said. I just wanted to remind everyone about tomorrow's assembly. The room buzzed. Our guest is a senior leader in the United States Army, the principal continued. Please be respectful. Marcus stared at his desk. He hadn't told anyone his father was coming. He didn't even know for sure. That night, his father came home earlier than usual. Big day tomorrow, his father said as they ate dinner. Marcus looked up. You know about the assembly? He asked. His father nodded. Yeah, he said. I was invited. Marcus's heart began to race. "Are you going to wear it?" Marcus asked. His father smiled faintly. "I think it's time," he said. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his collar. He didn't know why it mattered, but it did. At school, the energy was different. Teachers were nervous. Students were excited. Mrs. Aldridge wore a blazer instead of her usual sweater. As they lined up for the assembly, Marcus felt his hands shake. He wasn't excited. He was terrified, because if his father didn't show up, if something changed, if the silence stayed, he didn't know if he could survive another day of being called a liar. The doors to the auditorium opened. They walked inside, and Marcus felt the quiet begin to crack. The auditorium felt colder than usual. Marcus noticed it the moment he stepped inside. The way sound echoed. The way every shuffle of feet seemed too loud. The ceiling lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a pale glow over hundreds of folding chairs arranged in perfect rows. Teachers guided students to their seats with forced smiles. Single file. Eyes forward. Sit quietly. Marcus sat near the middle, hands folded tightly in his lap. His heart pounded so hard he was sure the kids around him could hear it. On the stage, a large American flag hung behind the podium. 2 microphones stood side by side. Everything looked official, important. Mrs. Aldridge stood with the other teachers along the wall. Posture straight, face composed. She loved order, loved structure, loved knowing what to expect. Today, though, something was different. The principal walked onto the stage and tapped the microphone. The chatter faded. "Good morning, students," he said. "Thank you for being here. Today is a special day for our school." Marcus barely heard the words. His eyes were fixed on the side entrance near the stage. He had no idea what his father would look like in uniform. He had never seen him like that. The principal continued. "We are honored to welcome a distinguished leader from the United States Army, someone who has dedicated his life to service, discipline, and integrity." A murmur rippled through the room. Mrs. Aldridge smiled. "This leader has commanded thousands," the principal went on. "But today he's here to talk to you about character." The principal stepped back, and then the doors opened. The sound was subtle, just a soft creak, but it cut through the room like thunder. A man stepped inside. He wore a perfectly pressed army dress uniform. Dark green, sharp lines, every detail precise. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders. Not 3, not 2, 4. The room stood automatically. Applause began, scattered at first, uncertain, then grew stronger as the realization set in. This wasn't just an officer. This was power. Command. Silence with weight. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The man walked with calm certainty, each step measured. He didn't rush. He didn't look around for approval. He didn't need it. Mrs. Aldridge straightened even more, her smile wide now. She loved moments like this. Moments that reflected order, hierarchy, accomplishment. The general reached the stage and shook the principal's hand. Then he turned toward the audience. The applause faded. The silence that followed was heavy, respectful, expectant. "Good morning," the general said. His voice was steady, controlled, warm but firm. "I won't speak long," he continued. "I know sitting still isn't easy." A few kids smiled. He spoke about leadership, about honesty, about discipline. Marcus listened, but barely, because the general's eyes were moving. Slowly, row by row, scanning faces. Then they stopped, locked, on him. Marcus felt like the floor disappeared beneath him. The general's expression changed, just slightly. Not shock, recognition, pride. Mrs. Aldridge noticed the pause. She followed the general's gaze. Her eyes landed on Marcus. Confusion flickered across her face. The general stepped away from the microphone. A few teachers shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't planned. He walked down the steps of the stage. Each footstep echoed. Marcus's hands trembled. The general moved through the aisle, past students who leaned away instinctively, until he stopped directly in front of Marcus. The room was dead silent now. "Son," the general said gently, "would you please stand?" Marcus froze. Then slowly he stood. "Yes, sir," he whispered. The general smiled. "Not the kind you give an audience, but the kind you give family." "Can you tell me," the general asked, "what you shared with your class yesterday about your father?" Marcus swallowed. He felt every eye in the auditorium pressing into him. He glanced toward Mrs. Aldridge. She had gone very still. "My dad," Marcus said quietly, "is a general in the army." A few nervous laughs escaped. The general nodded. "That's correct," he said calmly. The laughs stopped. He turned slightly, addressing the room. He told the truth. A ripple of confusion moved through the audience. The general placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Because," he continued, "I am his father," the silence was absolute. No whispers. No movement. Mrs. Aldridge's smile vanished. Her face drained of color. The general looked back down at Marcus. "You did exactly what I taught you to do," he said softly. "You told the truth, even when it was uncomfortable." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Then the general straightened and faced the audience again. "There's something I want to say," he said, "especially to the adults in this room." Every teacher stiffened. "Assumptions are dangerous," the general said evenly. "And bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind professionalism." Mrs. Aldridge couldn't look up. "I don't wear my uniform at home," the general continued. "I don't talk about my rank, because my son doesn't need my title to know my worth." He paused. "But no child should be punished for telling the truth, especially because they don't fit someone else's expectations." The weight of his words settled deep. The principal shifted uncomfortably. The general looked back at Marcus one last time. "I'm proud of you," he said. Then for the first time he hugged him. Applause exploded through the auditorium. Not polite, not controlled, real. Marcus sat back down, tears running freely now, not from shame, but from release. And Mrs. Aldridge stood frozen, realizing that the silence she had created had just spoken louder than anything she could ever say. The applause lasted longer than Marcus expected. It rolled through the auditorium in waves, loud, honest, unstoppable. Students clapped until their hands stung. Some stood. A few teachers wiped their eyes. Marcus stayed seated, shoulders shaking slightly, tears sliding down his face. For the first time in days, his chest didn't feel tight. It felt light. The general stepped back onto the stage, nodded once to the principal, and finished his remarks. They were brief. They didn't need to be long, because the lesson had already been delivered. When the assembly ended, teachers guided students back into lines. The noise returned slowly. Whispers, stunned laughter, disbelief. Was that really his dad? No way. He didn't lie. Marcus walked back to class in silence. Not the heavy silence from before. This one felt different. It felt like space. Inside the classroom, Mrs. Aldridge stood at her desk, hands clasped tightly together. Her posture was rigid, like she was holding herself up by force alone. The students took their seats. She cleared her throat. Before she could begin the lesson, Marcus's name left her mouth. "Marcus," she said quietly, "could you stay after class today?" A few kids looked at him sympathetically. Marcus nodded. When the bell finally rang, the classroom emptied fast. Laughter echoed down the hallway. Lockers slammed. Life moved on as it always did. Marcus stayed behind. Mrs. Aldridge closed the door. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she exhaled, sharply, like someone finally letting go of something heavy. "I owe you an apology," she said. Marcus said nothing. "I was wrong," she continued. "I made an assumption, and I let that assumption turn into a judgment." She looked at him now, really looked at him. Not as a student, not as a problem, but as a child. "I didn't give you the respect you deserved," she said. "And I'm sorry." Marcus nodded slowly. "I accept your apology," he said. His voice was calm. That surprised her. "Thank you," she said softly. That evening, Marcus walked home with his father. They didn't talk much at first. "You okay?" his father asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I think so." They reached the front door and Marcus stopped. "Dad?" he asked. "Yes, son? Do you ever get tired of proving yourself?" His father smiled, a tired smile, but a real one. "Every day," he said. "But I don't do it for them. I do it so you won't have to." Marcus thought about that. Years passed. Marcus grew older. He changed schools. He changed neighborhoods. He learned how to speak confidently in rooms where he once felt small. But he never forgot that day. He never forgot the teacher's certainty, or the way it crumbled in silence. He never forgot how quickly people decided who he was allowed to be. And he never forgot the lesson his father taught without raising his voice, that the truth doesn't need to be defended with anger, that dignity can be quiet, that respect should be given before it's earned, not after it's proven. Mrs. Aldridge changed too. She never accused another student of lying without listening first. She never assumed again without questioning herself. Because sometimes, the most powerful lesson in a classroom isn't in the textbook. Sometimes it walks in wearing 4 stars,